everyone, and welcome to the Centrist Post. My name is Lauren Morris. I'm your host today, and we have a very special guest, Trevor Loudon. Thank you so much for your generosity in giving me your time today, Trevor.
Oh, look, always a pleasure, Lauren, anytime. And big greetings to all the audience.
So, we're going to cover a few things today. And whenever I have a guest on the show, I'm really interested in hearing not only what you have to say about what's going on with the questions I'm going to ask you, but I'm interested in the guest himself. And so, I guess that my first question that I've been wanting to ask you for so many years is what was the spark in your life that triggered you to dive in so deeply on sabotage movements, subversive movements, operations? When did that start for you?
That started in 1984. Okay. Now, the reason it started, I was living in New Zealand. I'm from New Zealand, and we had a very strong military alliance with the United States, the Australian, New Zealand, um, US military alliance, ANZUS, we called it. And of course, we had been saved from invasion by the Japanese in World War II, by the Americans and what they did at Guadalcanal and the Coral Sea and Midway. So there's a lot of gratitude there. In 1984, we elected a socialist Labour government. And one of the very first things they did was implement a program of banning nuclear warships from our harbours. And of course, as America was the only country sending nuclear warships to our harbours, that effectively destroyed the military alliance with the United States. And I was very upset about that, and I campaigned against that. In the course of that campaign, I met a New Zealander, a Dutch New Zealander, who had infiltrated the New Zealand Socialist Unity Party, the New Zealand pro-Soviet Communist Party, for our security services. So he was a government spy inside the communists. And in 1983, he'd been sent to Moscow to the Lenin's Institute for Higher Learning to train with 3,500 real communists from all over the world. And while he was there, he and the three other members of the New Zealand delegation were put together with the leading Soviet experts on New Zealand. They had 16 on New Zealand in that institute alone, many of whom had lived here undercover as you know, pretending to be real, genuine New Zealanders. And they had psychologists and sociologists and linguists and historians and even sports experts. They knew New Zealand better than most New Zealanders did. And so the goal was this, it was simple. The Soviet goal was to destroy NATO, to make NATO break up, because then the Soviets could easily invade Europe. And that was their plan to do it. They made no bones. They taught their students this. This is what we're going to do. This was no secret. We're going to invade NATO as part of our plan for world domination. We're going to invade Europe. But Thatcher and Reagan were too damn tough. So they were thinking, well, we're not, they were running these big peace marches all through Europe and Greenham Common and all done by the Soviets. But Reagan and Thatcher were standing strong.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, we're chess players. What if we break up the ANZUS alliance out in New Zealand? What if we use the nuclear issue there and break that alliance up? That will encourage the European peace movement. So these four New Zealanders sat down with these Soviet experts and they worked out some slogans that could be used and a strategy that could be used to pull New Zealand out of ANZUS. And they came up with the idea of making New Zealand a nuclear-free country, which would then make them ineligible to be in ANZUS. And they thought that would be popular with the New Zealand people. And so they couldn't make this an anti-American campaign because Kiwis generally like the Yanks. They're grateful to the Yanks. So it had to be a New Zealanders standing up for an independent foreign policy, New Zealanders standing against the nuclear arms race. It was all pro-New Zealand patriotic campaign. And so they went back to New Zealand. They did secret deals with the Labour Party. They did secret deals with the peace movement. They actually signed a contract with the New Zealand Labour Party, a secret contract in the hotel workers' union rooms in Marion Street in Wellington. And in a few months, the New Zealand Labour Party had passed this anti-nuclear legislation banning nuclear warships from our harbours, and ANZUS was dead. The Soviets were overjoyed. They couldn't believe how quickly and easily this had been
Yeah.
achieved. Now, events overtook that, we saw Reagan stand firm. NATO didn't collapse, thankfully, because the minute it did, the Soviets were going to invade, and they still are going to, the Russians now. But that got me the big secret of communism. This is what I was taught. It is not rock throwers, it's not bomb throwers, it's not riots in the streets. It's the ability of a small communist party, and you could apply this to CARE and other groups as well in the Islamic field, to influence the social movements and particularly the trade unions of the target country. So the communists would set up a policy. It might be Obamacare, it might be open borders, it might be a nuclear deal with Iran. And they would make it union policy because communists controlled all the unions, and the unions would make it Democrat policy. That's how the British Labour Party gets its policies. That's how the French Socialist Party, the German Social Democratic Party, the Australian Labour Party, the Canadian Liberal Party, when they're in power, the communists are running the country and implementing their policies under the name of the Democratic Party or the Liberals. So I started studying this process very, very deeply. He said, this is the real secret of communism. It's the ability of a tiny communist party to get their policies implemented on a nationwide level, like Obamacare. And so, and during that study, which went for several years, I discovered the ties between Barack Obama and the Hawaiian communist Frank Marshall Davis well before he ran for office. And I started focusing heavily on America because I could see the process play out. And I wrote a lot of books. Glenn Beck used a lot of my information on his famous chalkboards, for instance, and that got me studying this subject. And that, of course, expanded out to Islamism, which is, in most countries around the world, is an alliance with the communist movement.
Mm-hmm.
And they use the same technology, the same techniques. So that's the short version of the story.
Well, that's very interesting because I've been looking at your books. I have your Security Risk Senators books. Here's one of them right here. It's kind of hard to see with my backdrop, but I've got both of them. And I also have your book that you wrote on Kamala Harris's Communist Roots, and it's called Stealth. And I have that one as well. And I like how your books read. I like how they're formatted. I like how they read. You basically, open these up, by saying this is what I'm going to tell you, which is kind of like what you just described as a foreword in one of your books, and it answers the questions about how we got here. We got here to this point, and so two things. So when you talk about I'm thinking about an elevator pitch. And so Mao's famous quote about communism that I pulled up, he says it is a hammer we use to crush the enemy. But what you're talking about that you've learned and that you've seen is these political movements that move in and they conduct their operations, their ground dominance operations that I call. They are strategic, they are operational, and they to conduct their agenda. What is astonishing to me, and I think with anybody, when you learn about anything, whether it's Islam or communism, and you start to understand just how saturated we are with this at this point, how many of these people are sitting in offices in our government? They are judges, they are lawyers, they are teachers. They have infected and infested everything in our society to the point where we are now, where the C word, the communism word, is now dinner time conversation.
Yeah.
It didn't used to be, right? And then
No, no, not at
bam,
all.
here comes Black Lives Matter. And we had to learn. We had to learn through COVID and we had to learn through Black Lives Matter. How saturated are we on a global level?
Well, like a lot of people just say to me, "Oh, there's no communism in America." I say, that's like a fish telling me there's no water in the sea. We are swimming in it. Like what's the transgender movement? What's the open borders movement? What was the Women's March? What was Black Lives Matter? What is the woke church? What is wokeness? What is woke Hollywood? Woke sport? That is all manifestations of the communist movement. This is the problem Americans have. They think of, when you say communism, they think of Leonid Brezhnev standing in Moscow watching a whole procession of nuclear weapons stream past him at Red Square. If it doesn't look like that, it's not communism. Well, Black Lives Matter is a pro-Chinese communist operation. The transgender movement is funded by the Chinese communists. The uh, the fentanyl epidemic is a communist operation. The wokeness just means you're awake to issues of social oppression. The Chinese communists used to call it consciousness raising. We used to call it
Mm,
brainwashing. But that's communism. And it's in every university, it's in every Bible college in the country virtually. It's in Hollywood, it's in sport. Why is it in sport? Because professional sport is controlled by Nike. Nike is not quite almost a Chinese company. It depends on the Chinese market. It depends on Chinese labor. So they implement Chinese policy. The COVID pandemic, with COVID, the Chinese gave us COVID, but this is the important part. They managed the response to COVID.
right.
Now, all of the states that had the harshest lockdowns, the worst lockdowns, are all the states with the most Chinese influence, where the Chinese controlled the local unions, and they controlled the local politicians. California, Washington, Oregon, Hawaii, New York, Michigan, Illinois, um, Wisconsin. They were the places with the harshest lockdowns. Where were the places with the lightest lockdowns? Texas, Florida, where the Chinese don't control to such a degree. It was they gave us a disease, then they managed the response to inflict the maximum possible economic and social damage on the country. It was nothing to do with stopping the pandemic. It was all about inflicting massive damage on our society. And the Chinese have a concept, they call it mass line.
Hmm.
The Chinese Communist Party comes up with a policy and everybody must adhere to it. And if you don't, you are punished. Like at one point in the Cultural Revolution, there were too many flies, so the Communist Party thought. So everybody had to go out and kill 10 flies every day. And if you only got 8, you're in trouble. Well, what happened in COVID? The World Health Organization, controlled by the Chinese, told us the only response was going to be masks, lockdowns, and vaccinations. Vitamin D therapy, herd immunity, hydroxychloroquine, all of that was completely forbidden.
Right.
And that
Ivermectin.
was enforced. All was forbidden because the mass line coming from the Communist Party of China, enforced by the Chinese controlled unions in this country, enforced by the Chinese allied politicians like Gavin Newsom, and pushed through the World Health Organization, a Chinese front, told us what the mass line was going to be. It was going to be lockdowns, vaccinations, and quarantines. And so that's what we did. And so we lived through 2.5 years of Chinese Communist Party control through the COVID epidemic. And most Americans still have no idea of this.
Yeah, I wonder about that. I hope that more of them, are starting to understand. But we had social distancing in Texas. They tried to, or the mayor of Austin, Texas, he tried everything, curfews, social distancing, and we saw the communists move in through the Black Lives Matter movement and try to grab a hold of the music community in Austin, Texas. They grabbed a hold of the music fund, the live music fund. And if you wanted COVID money, if you were a venue in Austin, Texas, and I would imagine this happened in Tennessee as well, in Nashville, because they were
Yeah, yeah.
organized. They were organized, and they did it through the equity commissions, which were set up by the city council in Austin, Texas. If you wanted COVID money, okay, to keep your venue alive so you didn't close down, you had to sit through 3 days of a course called Undoing Racism, and you had to be carded on your white supremacy. I saw it happen. It was just amazing. And so people were like this. People were, instead of being combative about it, they said, okay, we'll sit through it and we'll just get through it and then it'll be over and done with. Well, maybe it was over and done with for them, but it was never over and done with for the city council, for the equity commission, or for
Yeah.
Black Lives Matter. They have not stopped. They just move on to the next thing. So my question for you is, and we can go into the New York thing from this as well, how important in effectuating any of these, fiascos that happened are the mayors of the cities have the power to pull off. And now we have this new Muslim who's running for the mayorship of New York, which is frightening just because of 9/11. And I know when it comes to Muslims, this is a victory for them. This is a victory over New York. So this shows you that they have a long game. Okay, how important are the mayors and how dangerous is this Muslim who's running for mayor in New York?
Well, look, it's incredibly important, and you look at some mayors and the city councils, um, and the DAs. Now you got a Marxist DA in Austin, a member of Democratic Socialists of America. You got Greg Casar, not well, he's a congressman, but you've got what's his name, the guy from California who's now a counselor. He ran for Congress twice.
Beto?
Um,
Beto?
no,
Oh,
no,
okay.
no, no. The he's got a Jewish name. Yeah, he's on your city council anyway. He ran for Congress
Mm,
twice. His father was a member of the Communist Workers' Party, a Maoist group. He's a lawyer. Um, Look,
hmm.
all over the country, Democratic Socialists of America and other Marxist groups are getting seats on city councils, running as Democrats. They've done this in New York, they've done it in Chicago and Austin and Los Angeles and Portland, Oregon, Seattle, Washington, and many other cities. This is critical because what the Maoists do, they form little, and Jackson, Mississippi is another one. They take over city councils and they turn them into little Marxist principalities where everybody must kowtow, where they can loot the public treasury and divert money to their little communist causes and Black Lives Matter and all this kind of thing. And so this is a pattern. This is very well organized. I write in my book about Kamala Harris, about chopped Chinese officials saying we have to have organizations in every congressional district in America. We have to make the American Congress a subsidiary of the Chinese Parliament. Now, that's business organizations, voter registration, city councils. The communists have to control them as part of a gradual takedown of America. But if you're looking at Mamdani in New York, okay, he is an epitome of and the Muslims are following the same playbook, okay, and they often intersect. Well, Mamdani is a perfect example of this intersection, what we would call the red-green axis, because Mamdani is a card-carrying member of Democratic Socialists of America, which is a communist group allied to Cuba. It's a Marxist communist group that already has 6 members on the New York City Council. Okay. So he's got that going on. He is a full on Marxist who hates the cops, loves Black Lives Matter, hates ICE, is completely a revolutionary. but he's also an adherent of Shia Islam. And not just Shia Islam, the Twelver subsect of Shia Islam, the official ideology of the people of the Islamic Republic of Iran. He has the same official ideology as the mullahs and the ayatollahs do. That's where he comes from. So he's a hardcore Islamist. And you've got to understand the Twelvers are not just any Muslims. The Twelvers believe in the return to earth of the 12th Imam, who is now living in some sort of limbo, spiritual limbo, waiting to return to earth to usher in the day of judgment.
The
And
Mahdi,
to
right.
the Mahdi. Now, to hasten his return, which they believe is their duty, their goal, like he will come back when the earth is in chaos, when the earth is in revolution and war and chaos. So, how do we bring him back faster? We plunge the world into revolution and chaos and war. What has the Islamic Republic of Iran been trying to do since 1979? And, they are, backed Hamas in their recent attack on Israel, for instance. But now, so you've got a 12er Islamist, Shia Islamist, who he's very proudly a 12er. So he presumably believes in what they believe, that their goal is to bring the world into chaos and revolution and war. Plus, he's a revolutionary communist Marxist who hates America and hates Israel and loves Black Lives Matter and hates the cops and explicitly wants to defund the cops. Can you imagine New York? What would New York would be like 2 months after defunding the NYPD?
I
Can
can't
you imagine?
yes, yes, I can't imagine it's going to be like some Marvel um movie, Gotham City. It's going to be very dark
Like,
and
like
and
what's
frightening.
that? Mad Max. It's gonna be like Mad Max.
Right. Well, I think it'll be worse too than what we're seeing in London. And
Yes.
what's interesting with the Brits, how they're handling things over there, they still haven't it's out of control over there. We know that. And it's dangerous and it's violent and they've got a hold of the police, which who aren't doing anything. They're throwing Christians in jail. There's just an epic amount of raping and pillaging going on. It's horrible. Do you think Americans are going to tolerate it the way that the Brits have?
No, I don't. But what you've got to understand, New York is an enclave now that's going to be. Look, I'll tell you one positive thing, not positive. This
Almost.
guy, if this guy becomes the mayor, it's going to do wonders for the Florida real estate market.
Mm,
That's all I can say, because you're going to get hundreds of thousands of New York Jews and others who are going to come flocking back to Florida and Tennessee and Texas and boost a flagging property market. But it's going to absolutely tank New York. Now, the last time New York's had a Marxist mayor before, it's had two actually, Bill de Blasio, who was pretty bad. But if you remember back in the early 90s, that was when New York was at its lowest point. Times Square was a cesspit. There was drugs and prostitution and crime everywhere. The tourists were staying away. Businesses were closing because David Dinkins, the mayor of New York, would not enforce the law because David Dinkins was a member of Democratic Socialists of America, a Marxist. But compared to Mandami, he was a rock-ribbed conservative. He was a Marxist by the standards of that time when DSA had about 6,000 members nationwide. Now DSA has 80,000 members. It's allied to Cuba, allied to communist parties all over the world, and works heavily with Students for Justice in Palestine, with CARE,
mhm.
with ICNA, with ISNA, all of these Muslim Brotherhood and Hamas front groups. It's a hardcore communist revolutionary organization. So this guy brings both of those movements together. And we've already seen this movement acting up in the protests at Columbia University and other universities since October the 7th. So your question is, will Americans tolerate this? Well, Americans have a strong tradition of separation of powers. A mayor is a mayor. He's got authority over certain things in his district. And New York is a sovereign state. It's got a governor who will protect him. So this is going to set up a big fight between the federal government, presuming Trump's still in power. If the Democrats in power, they'll just spread his message everywhere. Well, he will defy ICE. He'll try and defund the police. Terrorists will flock to his city. Violence will occur. Attacks against Jews will become commonplace. Attacks against conservatives will become commonplace. Arsons will be. There'll be chaos. It'll degenerate into a horrible, horrible situation. Businesses will divert the city. The tax base will collapse, and New York will become a cesspit, exactly as they want to happen. So the only thing that will stop this will be federal intervention. That there are laws against sedition, there are laws against acting as an unregistered agent of a foreign power. There are all sorts of laws that could be applied there with the political will. But this is going to be a big diversion to President Trump when he's trying to fix a whole bunch of other problems, where he's got to deal with a communist insurrection in the most important city in America. It's going to be a big problem, and I don't see that there's anything going to happen to stop him getting elected. There's no candidate right now that can stop him, unless the 12th Imam comes back and stands against him. I don't know. There's not much that can be done to stop him, but the federal government is going to have to take action against him and basically do RICO lawsuits on New York if he starts doing what I know he's damn well going to do.
Right. And I know that people are thinking about that. I have a lot of attorneys that I interface with, and they're definitely trying to get those ducks in order. So about a year and a half ago, or maybe it was 2 years now, I did a great deal of link analysis using specialized software on Eric Adams. And this was before the FBI indictments came out, okay? And I looked into him very, very deeply and his Turkish connections. I went through thousands of records. I dug and I dug and I dug, and I came up, with a lot of information specifically about Eric Adams and his dealings with the Turkish community. And overall, I ended up really kind of liking the guy. I mean, he's kind of a chucklehead, and he's funny to watch. And the Turkish people, they're business people in New York, and but one of the things that has stuck in my mind that's interesting that I don't have a resolution to, there's actually two things, but one was Eric Adams is a hardworking guy, and he's always having meetings, and he spreads himself really thin. He meets with every cultural group there is. He has been consistently having meetings with these Bangladeshi people, and that's interesting because he's been having repeated meetings with them above and over everyone else. Do you know anything about that? Have you heard anything about that?
No, all I will say that I know about, and I believe he's had dealings with the Taxi Workers Alliance. Now, the Taxi Workers Alliance is run largely by Bangladeshi communists, and it controls the largely Muslim taxi force in New York. So I know there's a big Bangladeshi communist influence in the taxi industry in New York, which is a very powerful lobby group. And the Bangladeshi community is very much influenced by Marxism, generally speaking, not just in New York, but in many countries around the world. So that would immediately raise a few flags for me. The Bangladeshis are pretty darn militant. Yes, a lot of them are involved in business, but there is a very, very strong left-wing current and a very strong Islamist current running through that community. So it's just a matter of interest to me that he would focus on that particular community rather than the Koreans or the Dominicans or the Puerto Ricans or any of the other communities in the city, because it's always stood out to me for its militant left-wing streak
Yeah. Well, and Eric Adams
and
is,
Islamist streak as well, of course.
yeah, and Eric, Adams is he's popular.
Hmm.
People like him, but there's some shady stuff going
Well,
on
he's a sort
there.
of likable rogue, I think. I don't think he has any chance of defeating Mandami. I don't think there's any chance at all. And Cuomo can't do it.
Yeah,
So, and Curtis Lewa hasn't got a show.
right.
So it's hard to imagine, barring miracles, and we can never say for sure, but it's hard to imagine how Mamdani will not become the mayor of New York. It's hard for me to imagine that.
So when it comes to people act like activism, people who work on political campaigns or people, all of the let's say the counter jihad community who's going to be upset probably about this mayor, New York mayor being a Muslim. What is a good way that you think to get Republicans more involved in this? Because I've been having conversations with Republican people who have platforms, they're activists, and they're like, well, I'm 2 hours away from New York, and I really, can't do anything about New York, and they better get their act together, or they're going to go down the tubes. You know, is that the attitude to have when it comes to we're about ready to have a Muslim mayor of one of the most important cities, if not the most important cities in the United States?
No, it's not the attitude to have. And as Laura Loomer pointed out last night, she had conversations with many Republicans in New York because she's from New York. She's got a lot of
Okay.
contacts there. And the universal attitude was, oh, he can't win. We
Yeah.
don't have to. And now, well, Laura knew, and I had a fair idea that he could absolutely win because he had 50,000 volunteers,
Mhm.
about 20,000 of whom I believe were DSA members. Because, see, this is how AOC won. This is how they get the DSA gets their people elected all over the country. They make it a national campaign. So DSA, I think it's got about nearly 10,000 members, or 10,000 members in New York alone. That's DSA members. Plus, there's the Communist Party USA, Liberation Road, all of these other groups, Working Families Party, SEIU Union, all part of this. Okay. But they've also got thousands of DSA phone bankers phoning in from Austin, Texas, and Seattle, Washington, and Tucson, Arizona. So, the old Democrats, he's got a few hundred volunteers knocking on doors. DSA's got 50,000 people from all over the country, and union funding and Working Families Party, all of this. So they make it a nationwide campaign. That's how Kshama Sawant, the Marxist, got elected to the Seattle City Council, for instance. Her Marxist group from all over the country got behind her race. So, so it's not the right attitude. The Republican Party has no clue on this.
Right.
Now, here's the thing. Trump's got a three-seat majority in the House of Representatives. Now, that was because he's only got that three because two or three seats in New York flipped. Well, one or two of them have flipped back. Um, Putting this communist in charge there is going to energize the progressive base all over the state. And he is going to be, you're going to have SEIU, all these unions are going to go after those Republican seats in the suburbs in upstate New York to flip four or five of those seats so that Trump loses control of the House in the next election. And how long do you think it'll be before there's multiple impeachment suits and he is embroiled in a legal battle that consumes 90% of his time? So it is critical for the New York Republicans. I don't think they should waste their time on the race to stop Mandami become president, but they should be out there big time organized now to shore up all the seats they hold in New York and try and maybe flip one or two others. That's, when Lee Zeldin ran as an aggressive Republican for the governorship of New York against Kathy Hochul, he came very close to winning it with strong Republican leadership who actually fly the flag and stick it to the enemy, like Ron DeSantis did in Florida, and are strong, proud Republicans and not Democrat light, you can actually do very well in this situation. But what we've seen is a lot of cowardly, meek, moderate Republicans who would sell their own grandmother for a bit of peace and quiet. And that's why New York is now in the situation it is. You know, Giuliani was a Republican. He was the best mayor that they had for a long time in New York. They've had great mayors, Republican mayors in New York. But by surrendering the territory, by being weak, which and not even contesting the terrain, this is going to be the takedown of not just New York City, but the entire state, which is going to be absolutely critical in the midterm elections and the presidential election in 2028. So this is not just New York. This is a nationwide issue.
Yeah, this is frightening. So yeah, I'm finding in some of my circles with people, they very easily dismiss their involvement in something that really needs to be done. They really do. And I guess they're just going to have to touch the hot stove, or it's going to have to be a burning bag of you know what on the front door before they actually go, oh, well, I guess there's a problem because it's affecting me now. It
Yeah, yeah.
really,
Well, look, by that time it's too late.
yeah,
Look, think about this. Okay, say a Democrat gets elected in 2028 and Trump's only has only managed to deport, say, 5 million illegals. And I think that'll be optimistic at this stage. Five, maybe 10. Say if he has managed to do that. That'll leave 20 or 30 million new Democrats in the country. Because the first thing that President Kamala or President AOC or whatever will do is legalize every single illegal immigrant in the country and open the pathway for more migration from the Middle East and across the border. And that will completely swamp the Republican base forever. It's over. It's done. One bad presidential election and we are done until all of those illegals are gone and the Democrats don't have access to 20 or 30 million illegals to make sure they stay in power. It's a critical race. The race, that's why the Democrats are going so hardcore to stop ICE everywhere they can, because they know if Trump can deport the majority of the illegals, that makes it so much harder for them to win elections. But if he can't do that and the next Democrat comes in, 30 million new Democrat voters overnight, what do you do then?
yeah. And this is really a kinetic thing that's on the ground. I mean, when you start to understand and learn more about communism, and believe me, it takes years to study it for it to really sink in and you really get it into the fiber of your being and you understand that we already have kinetic things that are happening on our ground, that it's not going to take much to turn this country into some serious civil war, maybe in pockets, but it could
Yeah.
happen. But it really, really could happen.
Look, all your muso friends in Austin, do they think Austin's become a better place in the last 5 years? The,
Um,
the,
a lot of people have moved out. A lot of musicians have moved out because they economically can't handle it. Okay, and they sure as heck aren't going to deal with someone like Chaz Moore telling them, their band is not equitable. You don't
okay.
have the right people in your band. A lot of them have left. Austin, the people that live in Austin have a good life, and the bars are full, and people have jobs. They don't know what's happening, and frankly they don't care. We have a full-blown Democrat city council, and like you said a few moments ago, the way that they're spending the money, and you have a handful of people on Twitter, or a handful of Republicans, a handful of activists who see it, and they track the movements, and they track the city council, and they see what's happening. All they can do is complain about it. The Republicans in Austin, Texas are checked out. and they don't care. They live on the west side. Life is great. These older Republican women, and hardly come into town anymore for anything. Austin can burn to the ground for all they care. That's the
Yeah,
attitude here.
okay. Well, see, this is what people are not understanding. Trump's in the White House. He's closing the borders. He's dealing with stuff. The price of gas is coming down a little bit. Eggs are getting a little bit cheaper. Things are good. Well, what we've just seen in Texas in New York should be a warning to all of us how fragile this is. And look, just do the simple math. If those illegals are still here, and after the next election, if Trump loses the House in the next election, his agenda is effectively over for the next 2 years. Then we probably lose the 28 election, and you get a Kamala Harris type communist or an AOC type communist. They flood the country with more Muslim refugees. They reopen the borders. They give citizenship and voting rights to all the illegals here, and America is now Venezuela overnight.
Oh
You know,
yeah, I
that's
mean,
that's reality.
Texas, the roads out here aren't very good. They certainly weren't developed and designed very well like in California. They don't handle a lot of traffic. So we've built these toll roads and things like that to try to divert it. The toll roads have turned into the superhighway for the cartel. And the personal injury accident business in the state of Texas is booming, because I can tell you the freeways out here are extremely dangerous, and violently so, because of the illegals that are here driving without driver's licenses, and they don't speak the English, and speak English, and they don't know what to do. You can tell just in the last couple of years, or during the Biden administration, because I saw this in California when I was growing up and I was a child, which was one of the things that put all of this on my radar. I saw San Diego change in a month because of immigration. And so they flood in, and in about a month you can see them. They're shopping in your grocery stores, and they are aggressive. This belongs to us now. You
Mm.
need to go move somewhere else. Like Putin said, wherever a Russian soldier steps, that now belongs to him. This is
Yeah.
how they are, and they'll stand on the steps of the Capitol of the state of Texas. You've got the George Floyd family from Houston who come over, and they'll have a rally, and they'll stand on the front steps of the Capitol, and they'll say, "We want it all, and we're going to take it all, and we're here for the long game."
Yeah, look, Americans, you live in the freest, richest country the world has ever known. So you get complacent. Now, I would have thought 4 years of Biden would have shaken some of that complacency. And it has a lot of people. 9/11 should have shaken some of that complacency. And it did for some people. But even a lot of the Trump base are just thinking, well, he's in office again. It's all right now.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's far from all right. We are not winning, as Trump keeps telling us. We have slowed down the losing a little bit, which I'm
Yes,
great, which
yes.
is
Yeah, he's bought us some time. And so I wanted to move on to Ukraine a little bit, because basically what we're talking now is what people don't know and what they don't understand. And my experience with people that I do know is that they are dismissive. When all of the propaganda came out about Zelensky, and um, it was really effective. And when I started talking to people about, no, that's a lie, and this is a lie, once again, they didn't care. And it did not matter to them at all to just take 5 or 10 minutes and look into Zelensky's history as going to law school and completing law school, becoming a script writer, developing a very successful entertainment empire, right? They don't care to learn, and they don't care to know. Our enemies know this. We are now watching our president, who just hopefully he's back from NATO right now, where I watched him. I thought he was on his best behavior over there.
Mm,
He was
mm.
well behaved. He was nice. He said lovely things. It was a lot better than the recent G7 in Canada, which he basically fled from because he was an outcast and he wasn't, very well treated. It was a much different tone in NATO. Why does he not get it about Putin? I think he's in denial, and we're starting to crack that egg. He just can't handle being responsible for the demise of the economic system in Russia. His friend Putin, being the murdering, child killing, rapist, war criminal that he is, he can't handle, not that Putin's not a rapist. I don't know, maybe he is. But he's all these things, right? He certainly has
His troops are.
he has people doing all this kind of stuff for him. Why doesn't he get it? And is he going to get it?
Well, this is my assessment of President Trump. I think President Trump is not an ideological guy at all. And this is a weakness. Look, President Trump has dealt with pretty tough businessmen all his life, mob connected construction guys. And he will sit down with these tough guys and hammer out a deal and bluff them out. And he thinks, if I can deal with these mob guys, Putin's, what's the big deal? He's just another mob guy. He's a tough guy. That
Uh,
this is how he sees things. This is why he's doing deals with Qatar. Because, okay, these are people we can deal with. We can make some money. Everybody wants to make money, right? So we can get them off their crazy ways by making money together. I think that's President Trump's mentality. That there's nobody you can't deal with and nobody you can't
mhm.
dangle a carrot in front of. But if you're a Shia Muslim, a 12er, your whole goal in life is to bring destruction to the world, to bring in the day of judgment and a great period. This is your religious belief. This is what motivates you. What do they care about making a bit more money? They don't, how are you going to entice them by building a hotel in Tehran or something? You're not. Putin is guided by two ideologies, Marxism, Leninism, and Eurasianism. And he's guided by this sense of history. Putin's got more money than he knows what to do with. He's one of the world's wealthiest men. His people live in poverty, but why would he care about that? He
He
wants
doesn't.
to he wants to be Peter the Great. He wants to go down in history as the man who reestablished the Soviet Empire and tipped the balance and destroyed America. That's his destiny. That's his role in history. And if you're a Marxist Leninist, your God is history. Your immortality is your place in history. How are you going to deal with somebody like that with financial with financial incentives? This, I think, is Trump's biggest weakness. I think it's Witkoff's biggest weakness. They do not understand the ideological motivations of our adversaries. They think in terms of business and thugs and mafia and people who just want to make money. But to Trump's credit, he also has a heart.
He does.
He has a heart. He has a feeling for the underdog. He likes to be benevolent. And I think the best approach with him is what Zelensky is doing with him now, and others lay out the heart case for Ukraine. Point out the butchery that Putin is doing, that he is not acting in good faith, that the Ukrainian people are a brave people with a just cause. They're the underdog here. That is the way to get to Trump. So I think there's a war on, I think, in the Trump administration. Trump's surrounded by a whole lot of Russian people, pro-Russian people, including J.D. Vance, including Tucker Carlson, Jack Posobiec, Steve Bannon, Michael Anton, all these people we know who are trying to get him to do a deal with Russia, to abandon Ukraine, and let's do a big deal with Russia. Let's get Russia on our side, and we can stand against China together, and
Mm-hmm.
we can make lots of money. And that's they're trying to appeal to his vanity and his sense of his deal making sensibilities. And the battle is to appeal to his heart and to appeal to a sense of what is right and the sense of the underdog, because he's a torn man. He changes from who he's talked to last, and he's got this malevolent crowd around him who are trying to push him, motivated by Duginism and Yavanism and these defeatist isolationist philosophies, trying to get Trump to go on board with Russia, who just laugh in his face, basically. I think Trump's starting to see that a little bit. So he's getting very turned off Putin. And now is the time for Zelensky and that to love bomb him, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And at the NATO meeting, they were very complimentary to Trump. They were very
Mm-hmm.
appealed to his higher sensibilities.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the way to go. So I think Trump is a guy who usually does the right thing, though sometimes he does a few wrong things on the way, and can be appealed to. But I think the big battle is to discredit and get rid of the bad influences in his circle, the Tulsi Gabbards, the Tucker Carlsons, the Michael, all of these guys, and you can't really get rid of JD Vance, but he can put him out just opening post offices all over the country
Mm-hmm.
for the
Mm-hmm.
next 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the battle now, to reduce the bad influence around him and appeal to his sense of patriotism, his sense for the underdog, and basic human compassion. That's the way to move Trump in the right direction, I think.
He's also he just absolutely has to be impressed with Zelensky the more he learns about him and finds out who he is
Mm.
and what he's done. The Ukrainian people, before the invasion, a year before the invasion, um, in 2022, Zelensky armed the Ukrainian people. They knew it was coming, and they started also a program called T4P, Tribunal for Putin. And so they've been working on, and when I was over there, I visited with these people at an NGO called the Center for Civil Liberties. And they talked to me about this tribunal for Putin. And I said, well, how are you going to pull this off? Because of course their goal is to bring him to The Hague and try him in The Hague. But they got this backup system, I guess, going. And he says, and they told me, well, Ukraine needs to ratify the Rome Statute, and that's going to be our founding type of document. And then we have to work with our regional partners to establish a tribunal for Putin. So they've been working on this a lot. And so the language has evolved to the point now where this tribunal, which they signed some documents at the recent NATO conference about crimes of aggression. So the European Commission, I believe it is, or another group, they're another entity, um, have established and are establishing a tribunal so they can bring every Russian war criminal to justice in Europe. And they have some in jail, including some Chechens in jail, and from Ramzan Kadyrov's group. And so they've done all these things. NATO has united more. They have bolstered their security in Europe. They're ramping up their troops. They're distributing their troops. They're fortifying their borders. They're getting their act together. And so Trump surely had to see some of this. Mark Rutte of NATO and Friedrich Merz, the new chancellor of Germany. Friedrich Merz is a much stronger politician than Olaf Scholz was.
Well,
And
Olaf Scholz spent his youth hobnobbing with East German communists.
he
He was, you know,
Merz told Trump at the G7. We're not allowing that war criminal to sit at our table ever again anymore. When Trump came out and he's, saying you guys should have had, Trump here, Putin here at the
Mm.
G8. Okay. Mertz came out and flat out told him, and I think and there's a picture of Trump with just his mouth hanging open.
Mm.
And it was not an easy meeting for him in Canada at the G7. It didn't work. And while he said he had to come back and deal with Iran, I just don't think his body language showed that he was really out of his element there and uncomfortable and almost not welcome. And so I was really glad to see him have a little bit of a change for NATO. Um, so the question, and it's interesting that Zelensky has been talking about Putin is going to expand the war, and Trump is even saying, I think Putin is going to expand the war. Now, some analysts out there, some military, ex-military analysts out there who do a lot of content, they think that NATO can stomp Russia into the ground based on the fact that Russia hasn't really done very well in Ukraine. Okay. And they've lost all this stuff in Ukraine. Well, I can tell you, and I'm sure you know this too, because we know through people that we know that Russia has an obscene buildup of military personnel, equipment, compounds, and all the things in Belarus. It
Yes.
is massive. And I'm not sure that NATO can actually just stomp that out. They've already backed up and made a buffer zone in Poland and about the Suwalki Gap area. You know, uh, Russia has low trajectory ICBMs within about 6 kilometers of Warsaw. They can hit France. They can hit a lot of with these low trajectory ICBMs. They have thousands of attack helicopters. They've got jets. They've got hardened facilities. They've got millions of gallons of fuel sitting in trucks on the road ready to go. The number I heard is there's about 450,000 boots on the ground ready to go, which combines Africans, Syrians, all this kind of stuff. There is a
Chinese, Koreans, North Korean.
massive, okay. So the invasion into Poland could happen in August, it could happen in September, or it could be a couple of years from now. We don't know. Do you have any thoughts in this regard?
Well, I tend to think that's depends how the political situation goes, how Iran goes. I think there's a lot of factors, but I would expect it sooner rather than later. Look, see, here's the trap for Trump. If Trump continues to try and be friendly with Putin, and hopefully that phase is over, when the Russians attack into NATO countries, Trump will then face a problem. My best friend has now attacked us. Do I stand against him and plunge the world into a major war, or do I retreat and refuse to follow my NATO obligations, leading to the collapse of NATO and a loss of Europe? Either course is not going to go well for President Trump. But if President Trump stands against Putin now and warns the world that Putin is planning this kind of thing, he's not going to get caught flat-footed, and he is given peace a chance, and now he's being realistic, and now he's going to stand with the NATO allies. That is the only way forward for him, because if he continues this friendly approach, either when a Putin does attack, it's either going to embarrass the hell out of him or just cause massive wave of impeachments, probably joined by many Republicans. And so I'm hoping this is
Yeah.
a corner turned for Trump, that Trump is impressed by what he saw at NATO, and he's got to take a lot of credit for forcing NATO to get off their backsides and up their defense expenditure.
Yes, he
That's
should.
Yeah, he deserves a lot of credit for that. But now he's got to capitalize on that credit and stand with NATO, because what's going to win in the next election is by facing Russia down and forcing Russia into retreat. that would win him the next election. But that would cement his place in history. Look, I have a vision, and some people think I'm a little bit carried away. Like Reagan always had the vision of ending the evil empire. We've got to stand against the evil empire, and he forced Russia into a big retreat, and then nobody followed through with China and North Korea and all the others and Iran, and now they've all come back. Well, Trump's just given Iran a big fright, and I think it's a big mistake, by the way, to call a ceasefire now. Israel should be
Hmm.
finishing the job. But put that aside. Look, if you can taking down Iran is like taking out Italy in World War II. You're the three main powers. You're Germany, Japan, and Italy. When we took down Germany, Japan, and Italy, when we took down Italy, that made it the weakest link. That made it so much easier to deal with Germany and Japan. They got to finish the job in Iran. That's going to mean less drones for Russia. That's going to be less oil for China. Both of them are going to lose a lot of prestige and a lot of help. And then massive, hardcore economic sanctions on Russia.
Right,
The Russian economy is teetering on the brink.
right,
Don't, when they're on the verge of collapse, don't take your foot off their neck. You know, do the job, because my vision is this: you take down the mullahs, whatever comes next can only be better. Can only be. We could have a free Iran. There's a lot of opposition in Iran, but could lead to a follow-on in Russia. The Putin's regime could be deposed. Russia could split into two or three countries. There could be friendly governments in those countries. That'll put massive pressure on the CCP. The CCP almost fell during the white paper protests a couple of years ago. With a little bit of American encouragement and the end of the Putin dictatorship and the end of the mullahs, I think the CCP would be soon on the way out. And Rocket Boy would be easy after that. So I think we talk about the domino theory. If Russia is allowed to take Ukraine, they're going to take Europe. And that's absolutely
hmm,
true. But if Russia can be defeated in Ukraine and their economy wrecked through sanctions, and Iran can be taken out, the dominoes can go the other way. We can have a positive domino effect, and we can hand this world onto our children and grandchildren with a great degree of pride and confidence in the future. Isn't that the kind of vision that President Trump would want to go down in history for pursuing? Or is it better to appease Russia and China and just try and keep the peace for a bit longer? What would you rather be remembered in the history books for?
yeah. I'd like to be remembered as Reagan Part Two, who had
Yes,
who had the huevos to decommunize not only
yes,
the United States but the greater global movement.
exactly. And he has the tools to do it. He has a strong military still, but he shouldn't have to use, and the economic power. We still have the economic levers. If Trump does what he says he's going to do, puts 500% tariffs on any country buying Russian oil, that's the end of the Russian economy, right there. That's the end of it. That's the end of BRICS. That's the end of all these alliances. The CCP will be freaking out. And so, he has the power to do it. But, let's make friends with Mr. P. He's just a mob boss like, I dealt with in New York. No, he's not. He's an ideologue surrounded by other ideologues who believe their role, as you said, wherever a Russian boot has stepped, that's ours. Well, that's Germany. That's Poland. That's Eastern Europe.
Mhm.
And that's Central Asia. In the recent 2050 conference in Moscow, presided over by Lavrov, there was a document that my wife got translated, the conference document. And they said explicitly, our plan is to bring back the Russian Empire. It's going to incorporate all of Central and Eastern Europe, all of the Middle East, all of the Uzbek, Kazakhstans, plus parts of Africa, plus parts of Latin America. It's there in writing at the document of a meeting presided over by the Russian foreign minister. If that doesn't tell you what Russia is intending to do, nothing will. We can't say they haven't warned us. So I don't know if Tulsi Gabbard has told Mr. Trump about this. I would suspect not. But President Trump, if he understands the stakes and the treachery of Putin and the positive way he could be remembered, if he is the one who outdoes Reagan and takes down the evil empire for
Mm-hmm.
good,
Mm-hmm.
or at least for many generations, that is a legacy I would want to be remembered for. Not playing golf with Putin or being his buddy, but taking him down and liberating the Russian people, liberating the Iranian people, taking the Russian menace away from Europe, and liberating the Chinese people and Korean people. Wouldn't that what you want to be remembered for?
Yes, and we need to have another couple things happen too. Um, the other day on Twitter, Ted Cruz made some sarcastic remark about New York selling its soul, because of this guy that wants to run for mayor. But Ted Cruz is really looking the other way when it comes to the Islamization of Texas. He's really looking the other way because we're going to have that problem, here as well. So why is he looking the other way when he's somebody who
Well,
seems
well,
to
well, he
know?
has. Yeah, well, he has resurrected the bill to, designate the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization. He recently resurrected that bill. But I hear, and you can tell me, I heard that the federal government is dropping the investigation to Epic City.
Well,
Is that
maybe because, they know that our legislators here are really all over it, and we have state investigations going on with
okay?
Abbott
Okay.
and Pat and Ken Paxton and those guys, and they're competent and they're good. So I don't know if we need the federal investigation because
Okay.
I mean the FBI have infiltrated the mosques anyway. I mean they're watching them. I mean that's how we get a lot of the terrorist attacks that would happen on our soil foiled. They do, they are watching and they do catch these guys. So
Well,
that
just
did not
the
alarm me. That did not alarm me so much because what would alarm me is if Greg Abbott and Ken Paxton decide to drop the ball on the
yeah.
Epic
Okay.
investigation.
Okay, well, like I saw the FBI just arrested a whole bunch of illegal immigrant Iranians the other day, many of them with criminal convictions. And the assumption is that some of these, or at least, were connected to terrorist cells or something like this. So clearly there's activity there. Why Ted Cruz isn't more vocal, I don't know. Um, I think he's maybe not willing to take on a fight that he thinks others can, go the distance for and
Okay.
take the arrows for. I don't know,
That's
but he
generous.
has, yeah, but he has. I don't. Yeah, I think it's a priority matter for him because he has reintroduced the Muslim Brotherhood Terrorist Act. But I think, as Claire Lopez often points out, how much use would it be when a lot of what these guys do does not actually break the law? They're involved in lobbying. They're not involved in blowing buildings up. They're involved in lobbying legislatures. They're involved in getting inside the government buildings, not blowing them up. So I think we have to look at real legislation, security, and applying real legislation and using the FARA Act to go after unregistered agents of foreign powers, which there are many of in the country, and using sedition laws and that sort of thing. And I would
Mhm.
also change the immigration laws a little bit. Like when I came to America, I had to swear that I'd never been involved in any communist or fascist organization that sought to overthrow or undermine the US Constitution. Well, that's great, but what about expanding that to not? I have never belonged to any organization that advocated any legal system or social system in contravention to the US Constitution. Because if you're a Sharia compliant Muslim, you are automatically at odds with the US Constitution. You are automatically putting Sharia law above your obligations to the US Constitution. So if a communist or a Nazi theoretically shouldn't come here, though that law is never applied, why should a Sharia compliant Muslim? And the argument I make, and the Muslims hide behind this all the time, this is a matter of religious freedom. Look, I don't care what a Muslim believes. I don't care if you believe in Frank Zappa's flying spaghetti monster, or I don't care what you believe in. What I care about is your politics. And to be a good Muslim, you must support the political system, which is Sharia law. And that is deeply opposed to the constitutional system we have in this country. So we're not going after your religion, we're going after your politics, which is a completely legitimate thing for a country to do. It is not cool to invite known Nazis to America, for instance, or known terrorists or communists. So why would it be cool to invite known 12ers into your community, or people who believe that Sharia should be the dominant law of the land? Because to achieve that, they are going to have to destroy the Constitution.
Hmm.
And that's supposed to be treason, right?
Right.
You
Well, we're
know,
too lenient.
we are far too lenient.
We're far too lenient.
Russians wouldn't be so lenient. The Chinese wouldn't be so. If you set up a pro-American constitution group in Beijing, how long do you think that would last?
So I'm going to share my screen here. Tell our audience about your database.
Yeah, KeyWiki. So it's keywiki.org. Now, if you look at the top there, it says 178,200 articles and counting. So there's 178,000 files in there. It's a sort of format, similar wiki format to Wikipedia. You go in there, you type up here, you type in the name in your inbox. Barack Obama, Greg Casar,
Hmm.
your local city councillor, your local congressman, Lloyd Doggett, whoever it is. You type in their name and it'll bring up a big file with all of their connections. And it'll be communist connections and Islamic connections and foreign connections. And it works like Wikipedia. That one's about, yeah, Liberation Road. Yeah, exactly. So it'll bring this connect, and then you follow the blue links to all the other groups. So you go into, Greg Casar's file, and there's a big link to Democratic Socialists of America, which he's a member of, to Maoist groups that he was involved with. And
Right.
so you get a very good picture of your local community, because this goes right down to county and local level. That you can start to figure out the power mapping, who your opponents are in your area, who the local care people are, who the local DSA, Communist Party USA, Muslim Brotherhood guys are. Jackson
Jackson Hinkle.
one Tulsi Gabbard's old surfing buddy. If you go down, you'll see a picture of him. This is a leader of the American Communist Party who used to go surfing with Tulsi Gabbard. There's he and Tulsi getting together. One of the many communists that Tulsi has worked with.
I think
Um,
here he is in Austin at,
Austin, Texas, at this
yeah,
at Caleb Malpin's event. So
yeah.
you see, there's Tulsi, there's Jackson surfing, there's Jackson, there's Tulsi surfing at San Clemente. There, they were both together at the Rage Against the War Machine a couple of years ago with a whole, there's Tulsi there, Jackson's over here somewhere, absolutely slagging Ukraine, attacking Ukraine with
Yeah.
a whole bunch of communists. And this woman is now director of national intelligence under Trump. Do you think she's honestly feeding him a good intelligence picture? The,
It's
the woman should be investigated by the intelligence community, not in charge of it.
Yeah, it's absolutely frightening. And if you look at this photo right here where my cursor is, okay, this is in Austin when they came to Austin. This is Caleb Maupin here, and you can see this bust of Lincoln.
Lincoln
And so these guys, they will get up
and a
and they,
hammer and
yeah,
sickle.
yeah. And they will get up and they will tell you, we are the true Americans. Yes, we're communists. America has been communist since the 1930s. Y'all just aren't on the same party with us. This is what these guys believe, and they believe that they are just the epitome of what an American patriot should be. They are the example of of the new patriots. Why?
And they're
And
on Tucker Carlson all the time.
well, and this is the thing. Okay, so that's probably the answer to my next question. How did this little short dude here he is with Lavrov right over here, Jackson Hinkle. How did he become such a big player? I mean, he's eclipsed Caleb Maupin at this point, who's already been around the world and had, photo ops with Latin American communists and so
His
forth.
Hezbollah funerals,
He,
China, you name it.
I mean, okay, so here Hinkle is doing his thing, going around to all these conferences, meeting all these people. What kind of ground are they gaining?
Yeah, this guy was a surfer dude in San Clemente a few years ago.
No, he's
Failed to get a seat on the San Clemente City Council, running with Democratic Socialists of America. There he is, Jackson Hinkle. There's Tulsi Gabbard at an anti-nuclear protest. So Tulsi just did this little video about the dangers of nuclear war. And she talked at there he is with Katie Porter, who was a member of Congress for some time, very close to CARE, very close to DSA. But the point I'm getting at there is Tulsi did this little video about the nuclear winter that would occur after a nuclear war. That is a Soviet disinformation meme, well exposed, that was brought out by the KGB in the 1980s to scare people away from supporting Reagan's arms buildup. She put a video out on Soviet propaganda. There she is with the World Economic Forum when she denied being a part of it. And here she is talking about the honor of being invited to this organization. So Jackson Hinkle, see what the left does is they promote the form of young global leaders. How the left does it is this. This is what they did with Obama. The Saudis, the Iranians, the Russians, the Chinese have had networks in this country for 50 years. And they pick out young, promising activists and they give them jobs in unions or they give them jobs in publications or in the Democratic Party. And then this little mafia network of Marxists promote each other through, like a mafia, promote each other through the hierarchy. Now, Jackson, here she is. Here's Tulsi with Christine Ahn, who is North Korea's best friend in America.
which one is she?
Christine Ahn, this little woman here in the red and the glasses.
This
That's
one right
Christine
here.
Ahn. Yeah, who
Yeah.
goes to North Korea on a regular basis and is known to work with North Korean intelligence agents, and she is close to Tulsi Gabbard. And this is not long
Mm.
ago.
Wow.
So Jackson Hinkle, he's got 3 million followers on X. Well, I would say probably 2,995,000 of those are Russian bots. This is what, see, in the old day, this is how the Russians used to subsidize the American Communist Party. The American Communist Party published a magazine called People's World, which nobody read. But the Soviets would order 100,000 copies of each run for distributing around the Soviet Union. So they'd pay for every edition, the Soviets would pay the Communist Party $100,000 or $50,000 every month or every 2 weeks. So what do they do now? They flow a lot of traffic to your websites, which earns you advertising revenue and credibility.
Okay.
They use their friends like Tucker Carlson and Jack Posobiec to get you audiences, to get you into meetings and all of this kind of thing. So they raise your influence. There she is with the head of the Iowa Democratic Socialists of America at one of their meetings. There she is with a couple of Democratic Socialists of America Marxists from Los Angeles. She has so many communist connections. She wouldn't be able to pass wouldn't be able to pass a background
A
check to drive.
background check.
Yeah,
Yeah.
look, there she is with Dennis Kucinich, Russia's best friend in the US Congress, the man who took her to Syria, right? The man who took her to Syria to introduce her to Assad, the puppet, the Russian puppet in Syria, who she came back to America defending and saying, no, he wasn't really gassing his people. I was at the People's Summit in Chicago in 2016, just 3,000 communists, just after she'd come back from Syria, and she got in front of 3,000 communists and gave them the Soviet propaganda line, the Russian propaganda line. Pretty much the same message she gave to CPAC when she was there. She is with the attorney. I think I maybe got that wrong. No, the wrong picture. She's pictured with the Attorney General of California, who comes from a Filipino communist family. But there she is with Judy Chu, Communist China's best friend in the US Congress. Al Green, hardcore Marxist.
Yeah, right
You
here.
know, these are the people she hangs around with. She did hang around with till she found it more advantageous to infiltrate the Trump movement. And Tucker Carlson and Elon Musk got her the job as DNI. When one senator was about to refuse to vote for her, Elon Musk had a meeting with the senator, and the senator changed his mind. Elon Musk's father was just at this big conference in Moscow praising Putin,
Right.
praising Russia as this wonderful country. So there she is with with a couple of hardcore Maoists and Bernie Sanders.
Mhm.
This is Tulsi Gabbard. She shouldn't be allowed to get a job in the Department of Agriculture inspecting farms, let alone Director of National Intelligence.
Yeah, no, it's just incredible that she's in the
Well,
position that she's in. I mean, I'd really like to see Trump fire her. I kind of have a feeling
I
he's going to.
I think so too. But okay, here's a quote from Rick Nagin. If you just pull that back up, she had a lot of connections. No, no, just down a little bit, down just to here. Leave it there. She had a lot of connections to NIAC too, the National Iranian Action Committee, which is the front for the mullahs, which is why she didn't want Trump to attack Iran, because her friends are running Iran.
Hmm.
But here's what the head of the Ohio Communist Party, Dennis Kucinich's best friend, said about Tulsi when she was running for president. Uh, she will make a tremendous contribution to the primary debate and help move the electorate in a progressive direction. I have great confidence that would she be a great president. Her election would be an enormous defeat for right-wing extremism and its policies of racism, male supremacy, and war. That's a statement from the head of the Ohio Communist Party about his friend Tulsi Gabbard and the benefits to America that would ensue from her becoming president.
Yeah, I even in the alternative, what I call the alternative Christian media, which would be um, the Real America's Voice network, Steve Bannon's network. Um, there just needs to be more of this information. People need to know this about her. I mean, I am seeing a lot more activity about it on X, which is very powerful, by the way, to
Yeah, yeah,
get a spotlight, shined on people because our leaders see it, our president does see it. So it gives me hope that
yeah.
the information that we present is being seen and it's being heard and it's taken seriously, because Trevor, this is a mountain of information on her. This is not just, this is why your KeyWiki database is so important. So everybody, this is keywiki.org. Go back to the home page. This is not just, this is what's great about open source intelligence. You don't just have one article here or somebody's opinion, your nightly news guy that you watch who's telling you what to think and how to vote and everything else. This is a mountain of information. And
Yeah,
this,
this is so big. It's now referenced by Grok and ChatGPT as a source.
oh, congratulations.
Yeah, it is. It's regular. You'll see
You've
this.
arrived.
Yeah, yeah, I've arrived. Okay, but that's it. There's 178,000 polls. Some are just stubs, but many of them are extensive. If you want to know the real Hillary Clinton, get it on KeyWiki. The real Barack Obama, the real Greg Casar, the real Lloyd Doggett. You will find all the information. That's all about Anthony Albanese. A whole page on Tucker Carlson and
The real,
all the Russian propaganda, the pro-Russian guests he has on the most extensive database on Tucker Carlson. You see, right there with Tulsi, he got Tulsi that job, and he is a militant
uh,
anti-Israel and Ukraine character. He is absolutely a Duganist, in my opinion, and shouldn't be allowed anywhere near anything to do with American public opinion. Well, there he is right now. When he interviewed Dugan, the guy who wants civil war in America, the guy who wants to set the Iranians on the West, the guy who wants to destroy Ukraine and the West, in his own words, Tucker Carlson interviewed him and made him look like Grandpa Walton, as this kindly old Christian conservative gentleman. You, he knows better. He
he
knows that Duke
does.
is one of the most evil men on the planet who has openly called for civil war in this country, the destruction of the West, assassination of Western leaders, and weaponizing Islam against the West. That's Alexander Dugin, and he made him look like Grandpa Bloody Walton.
Yeah, it's incredible. So, um, we've seen Mark Levine rail against some of these people lately. Oh, and
Yeah, and
he's
that's
not
been a big
holding.
turning point. That's
Okay, what is that going to do?
I think I think there's a civil war in the conservative movement right now between the realists like Mark Levin, who have been largely silent up till now, and the pro-Russia party, the Posobics, the Bannons, the Tuckers, who are fighting a defensive battle now. I think the tide is turning on these people. And I especially think if President Trump flips to a much more aggressive position in Russia, these people are going to be totally sidelined,
Right.
and Mark Levin attacking them and calling them out as he has done, I think is a great thing. I'm very, very proud of Mark Levin for doing that, for standing against these people, because they got to be exposed. And I got to say, Tucker's losing credibility fast. Tulsi's losing credibility. Steve Bannon's fighting his battles.
Hmm.
Um, Jack Posobiec's under pressure.
Hmm.
These people are, the tide is turning against these people, and it can't turn fast enough. Can't turn fast enough at all.
Yeah, it can't turn fast enough. And I really thought that they thought that the Ukraine war would be over in a
Mm.
month and then they could just move on. And as time's gone on, they're cornered now, and all
They
of
are
it,
good.
they're cornered, and they don't really have an off ramp or way out, nor should they have one, in my opinion. I think that
No.
they what they've done, with the things that they have said about the Ukrainian people, from Marjorie Taylor Greene saying, I can't even find it on a map, to all of the other, despicable things. This country could really use a dose of some real empathy, and it could also use a dose of cracking open some books and learning your history, because this is not going to be the Russians bombing Aleppo or Idlib or anywhere else in Syria. This is going to be the Russians bombing the Baltics, and it is going to affect us. And the thing that got me so involved in Ukraine was just that those people um, were so dismissed by the because of the propaganda. I just thought it was just such a shame, because it is not okay for the United States to take a knee to anybody, but it seemed to be okay for Ukraine to take a knee to Russia, as if living
Mm.
under the boot of Putin was going to be some kind of utopia, Trevor.
Well, look, this the point you raise is very important. Empathy. You've got to be pretty hard-hearted to consign 40 million people to tyranny, slaughter, and death. You'll be pretty hard. So how do you do that? Like Hitler, you'll be pretty hard-hearted to slaughter millions of Jews. So what do you got to do? You got to dehumanize them first, so they don't count, so they don't matter. This is why Tucker's lies are so absolutely despicable. When he talks about the corruption, the fictitious corruption, when he says that Zelensky's a dictator who won't allow elections, when he lies about the casualty figures, when he lies says that Zelensky's suppressing Christian churches, which is a complete lie, and it's Putin who's suppressing the Christian churches.
Right.
When he lies that Zelensky's shutting down opposition parties, when the only party shut down was the pro-Russian Ukrainian Communist Party, which Tucker neglects to mention deliberately. Look, there are consequences for those lies. I sincerely believe that the reason a lot of Republicans didn't make much more of a public stand when Putin first invaded Ukraine was they were intimidated by Tucker Carlson's base.
Okay.
Because Tucker had taken an anti-Ukraine stand, a pro-Russian stand, and it had affected millions of American conservatives with this stuff. And so the Republicans who stood for Ukraine got huge amounts of invective from their Republican base. And I think that is why the Republicans weren't strong. I think that's why DeSantis wasn't strong on Ukraine. And that has directly led to prolonging the war
Right.
and thousands of Ukrainian deaths, let alone hundreds of thousands of Russian deaths that were completely unnecessary. But I think Tucker Carlson has blood on his hands.
That's very interesting.
A lot of blood on his hands.
Well, Trump I mean, at minimum, has removed, lateral support. Did we want U.S. aid to get dismantled? Sure. Okay. Rewrite the contracts, rebuild it from the ground up, fire everybody, get rid of it. But there's some good people over in Ukraine that needed that money, that need that money. And there's some other things that Trump has done kind of in a sneaky kind of way to remove some of
Radio Free Liberty,
that was
Radio Free Europe, I mean, yeah.
okay, pulling the Yale project
Yes,
where
yes.
looking for the children. There's just a lot of things that have been have been removed that a lot of people don't know about that Trump has actually done that has not been good, and we hope that that's going to go away. But I actually have one last question for you, then we can wrap this up. Um, Knowing what you know about history and wars, how do you see Zelensky yourself personally, and how do you think what's going to be written about him? What are they going to say about him in history?
Well, that depends on who wins. If the right side wins, he is going to be recognized as one of the great heroes of the 20th century. He's going to be up there on a par with Churchill or others. I look, there's about two or three men I would really be honored to meet in my life, and he is one of them.
Oh,
I think that man is a hero. And it just guts me that the corruption charges that are laid at his door with no evidence whatsoever. That man, when he held that country together in a critical time, he was offered a way out. And what did he say? I don't want a ride, I want bullets. That's an inspiring statement. That's a courageous man. That's not a man out for personal aggrandizement. If he's so rich and corrupt, Why wouldn't he just take his ill-gotten gains and go and live in the French Riviera for the rest of his life?
Hmm.
Because he's not corrupt. He hasn't got ill-gotten gains. He's a good man, a courageous man who stood by his country in the darkest of times. Yeah, I think he's a hero. I think
He,
there's no question.
I have a great deal of affection for those people, and I have a great deal of affection for him. And it absolutely breaks my heart. Um, and I don't look away. I'm not one of these people that look away. I get up every day and I watch it and I look at it, no matter how bad it is. And I have friends over there who I'm in close contact with, and they appreciate any kind of comfort and support that you give them. But when you've got a reporter or a photographer who's off the side, like they were the other day, and there was a photograph of them at NATO. It was Ruta, Ursula von der Leyen, Zelensky, and one other man. I don't know where he was from. And there was just the four of them up there on stage, and they were basically opening the NATO conference. Ursula is talking to Zelensky, and he's looking at her, and the camera is off to the side. The pain on that man's face is imprinted on him. You can see it, and you cannot deny his sincerity. He is a genuine man. He is a good man, and he's got this interesting skill set, you know, which I really, really relate to. And when I see the pain on his face, and I cannot imagine how he gets up every day. I mean, the determination and the will, how he keeps going is, I don't understand it. And I hope for him that it does end. We feel that Ukraine has won the war. Russia has not achieved their goals, and but Ukraine must have victory, and that's the only acceptable
Yeah.
outcome.
Look, 100%. Look, Ukraine cannot lose, Russia cannot win the war. The West can only lose it. You know, if the West stands solidly behind Zelensky, Russia cannot win. And if Russia cannot win, Putin is gone. And you get some big changes occurring. Maybe some for the worse, but I can't imagine that. So yeah, look, I think Zelensky will be identified with this war like like Churchill is identified with World War II. I really think he will be written about for a very, very long time, and deservedly so. So I don't get emotional very much, but this is one subject that does make me emotional because I feel every insult.
Yes, I
Feel
agree.
every casual, self-centered, disgusting insult that is hurled his way by people who wouldn't be fit to lick his boots.
Exactly.
You know, I feel that, and
Exactly.
I think you can see that. You know, that makes me angry. So look, no, he is a hero,
He
and
is a
no matter how
hero.
this turns out, you cannot take that away from him. So, um, Ukraine deserves full victory. That's the only real goal here. And it is our job as Americans or wherever we can to try and encourage the Ukrainians in any way we can and try and expose what the Russians and their allies are doing. That's our role here.
And
And
with
anything we
that,
can.
Trevor, we have to, and you've definitely done this with all of your work. You're a wonderful teacher and researcher and writer and everything. What you do in your team, you improve the American intellect, and we badly need it, which I think is really, really obvious. And so, I personally um, really appreciate all of the work that you have done, and it's going to be there forever. It's there forever for people to learn. And you have the strength to keep going as well. And I call you, when I talk to people about you, I refer to you as a first authority, which is kind of a legal term, like the law books are called first authorities. You really are a first authority on communism and all of your subject matters that you've done. And we are better for having you. So thank you for everything that you do for
Well,
us.
I appreciate being part of the team and appreciate being able to contribute to a country that's done so much for my native country and every free country around the world. You know, this is our mission to preserve and extend freedom in our time. That's our mission. And the front line for that right now, the two front lines, well, the three front lines are America, Israel, and Ukraine. That's where the battle
Mhm.
is being fought, and we've all got to pitch into that. We've all got to stand together. So I'm honored. I'm honored by what you said, and I try and live up to it every day.
Yeah, well, thank you. And thank you for coming on and let's do this again soon. And everyone who is hung out with us so far, stay a little bit longer. And I'm going to have Trevor's links and whatnot in the credits. And Slav Ukraine.
Slava Ukraine.
Hirom
God
Slava.
bless
Thank
you.
you.
God bless you.